Hey, I'm Helen.
And I'm Greg.
Welcome to the Eater Upsell, where we talk to chefs, authors, and all sorts of other people we love about the food world.
This is a podcast-style show, so please pop in your headphones and give this a listen in the background. And if you like this, remember to subscribe to the Eater Upsell on iTunes or the podcasting platform of your choice. So I feel like there are more celebrity foodies in this world than ever before. Everyone seems to be a foodie in Hollywood right now.
You said the F word.
Foodies.
I have a problem with that word in a non-dogmatic way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't automatically recoil when someone says it, but I do think it implies a degree of being a jerk that I don't want to be.
I see what you're saying. Who do you think kind of started this thing? I have a few ideas, but
I feel like the kind of king of celebrity foodie mountain is Aziz Ansari.
That's exactly who I was going to say, yeah.
From early on in his career, like when he was just sort of doing stand-up in New York, and then when he started kind of entering liminally the realms of national celebrity, he always has been kind of hanging out with chefs and being very much aware of that kind of chef as celebrity phenomenon. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of this is calculated and how much of this is just a byproduct of the fact that he went to NYU, and in New York, it's impossible to get away from chef as celebrity.
And I think that he was also, I think he's always been a part of stand-up, talking about food and Chick-fil-A and stuff. Then there was that thing on Food and Rec. Didn't he have that thing about funny food words?
Oh, yeah, where he, like, on Parks and Rec was coming up with his character.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that was him and how much of that was the show, but he became this face of, like, weird, bizarro food language. Mm-hmm. This, like, lol speak of food words.
It was like...
Chicky, chicky, parm, parm.
Exactly.
Parmesan was my favorite.
It was funny, but I also thought it was a bit of satire or something, you know, with the way that people have, like, these kind of pet names for their favorite foods, you know?
Rachel Ray, I think, was the real elevator of those kind of diminutive, almost childlike words. Like, she insists on calling sandwiches Sammys. Mm-hmm. And that kind of play with language is really fun, both to make fun of and to kind of actually do. Yeah. The same way I say JK out loud, even though I could also just say the actual phrase, just kidding.
Totally.
But it's not just Aziz anymore. Food is this relatively new space for people to be famous in.
And there's a lot of celebrities whose star might have faded, and they're like, well, you know what? I can get a show on the cooking channel. What's the name of the actress from Goodfellas? It's like her and her husband. They live in Park Slope.
Debbie Mazur.
Yes.
Extra virgin.
Yep.
I know her primarily as Madonna's makeup artist and also the woman from Entourage.
There you go. Oh, yeah, she was great on Entourage. Yeah. The thing that I don't really like is that there seems to be a lot of model foodies.
Like fashion models who get really into food.
Right.
Oh, my God, this is...
And I think that this all started with Padma Lakshmi as, you know, the co-host or whatever her job was on Top Chef. And it just became this thing of, like, you know, every photo shoot she does is like, she's this beautiful woman, but look, the chocolate's dripping into her mouth.
It hits these two really fundamental points of tension in our culture. I think the first is this sort of sensual connection between sex and food, where these are these things that just physically feel good, and we have built huge, you know, cultural structures around them that allow us to just assess it and talk about it constantly. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is that kind of cool girl idea of, yeah, she eats like a stoned frat bro, but she looks like a freaking supermodel.
Right. Here's how I feel about it, is that I don't care what Carly Kloss or Chrissy Teigen are eating. I don't know why I should care that they eat like regular people.
Well, first of all, I'm really obsessed with celebrities. Like, I read gossip blogs and I stay up on most of this stuff. I think that when someone talks about the food that they eat, you learn a tremendous amount about their lives. And something that bugs me about celebrity, and the thing that keeps me obsessed with it, is how completely artificial all of the things that are put out into the world are. But when someone's telling you what they eat, that says a ton. It's this window into actual humanity in a way that I think is rare.
Okay, well, I think that's really interesting. But reading an interview where somebody's like, guess what? Cheeseburgers. I love them.
Yeah, but that's the packaged bullshit, right? Like, that's like someone saying, oh my God, In-N-Out Burger is like my totally favorite thing. And that's, you know, a canned line you're saying to be relatable. Right. But if someone's doing something like a real diary, you know, here's what I ate for 24 hours, or even better, here's what I ate for a week. Right. Like, there's not, you can fudge that a little, you know, you can make sure you set up lunch dates at the coolest places, and you can maybe leave out like the fact that you left 97% of the food on your plate, but you wind up being real in a way when you convey that in a way that I think, you know, can't be airbrushed out.
I was very fascinated by Jay-Z and Beyonce when they were first together, and it would just pop up like here and there in page 6. They went to like the craziest roster of restaurants, like night after night after night, all over New York City and beyond, you know?
I think they're really into food. I mean, and not in a performative, I'm going to make this my new career way, even though they did launch that vegan meal delivery service.
Right, yeah.
But no, I remember for a really long time they were going to Lucali, this pizza place in Brooklyn.
I feel like they were going there too before it was totally vetted by everybody. It was like, oh, who'd they hear about that from? You know, it wasn't like they read some list or something.
But there's got to be someone, you know, that Jay-Z and Beyonce have someone on their staff who reads Eater every single day, who's like living on the heat map, who's got his ear to the ground, is like probably texting with Danny Bowen and David Chang saying, listen, J and B want to go somewhere cool. Where do they want to go?
I hope so.
I hope they do.
I remember that they had some sort of like anniversary dinner at Kurt Guttenbrunner's Valse. Now that is a cherry place to go for something like that. It's a 10-year-old restaurant. Nobody writes about it. Nobody talks about it.
It's really good.
It's really good. It's really intimate.
Yeah, no, that's a really pro move.
Yeah.
I think a lot of celebrities would choose whatever the sexiest, hottest place is, or somewhere really old school, old money, like the Four Seasons.
Right.
Or, you know, the other thing that you have to realize too, though, is like Jay-Z is a New Yorker. He grew up here. He knows the city. Maybe he's been going to Valse for years.
Since day one.
Since day one. He and Kurt Guttenbrunner are like old pals.
Yeah. So right now in the Eater Upsell studios, we are joined by who I consider to be a titan of not just the Philly restaurant scene, but the kind of national restaurant scene right now.
He's a big deal.
He's a very big deal. It's Michael Solomonov. I got the name right.
You did. You nailed it.
Excellent.
Mike Solomonov runs a bunch of restaurants in Philly. He's the chef at Zahav and the co-owner and partner at many, many more, especially if you consider that Federal Doughnuts has like 4+ locations.
Welcome, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
You did a very nice thing, which is you brought us a box of Federal Doughnuts.
I did.
Which has been getting these like very lustful stares from our producers.
I know. Well, it was weird on the train up here. I thought people kept staring at it. You know, I feel like they, especially on the Amtrak to New York, I think people understand the brand and they were kind of eyeing out the donuts.
Well, wow. Federal Doughnuts is huge in New York, which is crazy considering it's not here. But I think there's nothing New Yorkers love more than stuff they can't have.
No, I mean, we're talking about a $17 like Bolt bus ride. Like New Yorkers can't have it, but they can.
Right, but you have to put in effort and time, or you have to get a friendly person from Philadelphia to bring a box of them back up on the train.
So I know actually several New Yorkers, food writer people, that have made trips to Philly like just to eat at your collection of restaurants for one weekend.
That's really flattering.
Do you find a lot of kind of cross-pollination?
Is the dining room just nothing but New York food writers at all times?
It's weird, actually. It's not, I mean, not just writers, but in the summer in particular, I think that a lot of people from, like folks from DC and New York are visiting Philly, and they are going to like the Barnes Foundation or running up the Rocky Steps or whatever, you know, and there's like one or two meals that they can have, and we're lucky that Zahav is one of them, I guess, and Federal Doughnuts could be another. And I mean, there's a lot of amazing restaurants in Philly, a lot like great value and really exciting, and I think really unique to Philadelphia, not just like, let's do it in New York, let's do it in Philly, let's do it in DC. So I think that I'm flattered and I'm happy to be part of like the Philly dining scene. It's cool.
Do you think there's something unique to Philly that makes it such an attractor to people from other cities?
That's a great question. I think that the cost of doing business in Philly is a little bit cheaper because of the BYOB culture. A lot of chefs or restaurant people can, with a lot less resources than, having to do it in Philly or rather New York or DC, can open a restaurant. Like it doesn't cost quite as much if you're going to go BYOB. And I think things are just a little bit more reasonable. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's just there's less limitations.
So there's room to be adventurous as a chef, or to not have to just like be the burger and kale salad restaurant.
I think so. The problem is that the restaurants can also be short-lived. Philly doesn't have the density that New York or DC has either. So I think that in order to make it in Philly, hype doesn't really work. Like the big chefs or the New York transplants, the ones that do well in Philly are ones that like work their ass off, and the food is fantastic.
That seems like a pretty reasonable like set of requirements for success.
You'd think. I mean, I don't know. Hype is a weird thing, and restaurants are a weird thing, and food is a really weird, subjective thing. So people talk about the rage or this and that, and I don't know. It's weird to travel a little bit and eat. I mean, I do all the time. But I don't, the last thing I want to do is disappoint people. I don't want people to come to Philly visiting from New York or DC or wherever and say, well, this was just okay, this is lackluster. With any of our concepts, with Zahav, with Dizengoff, with Eater Upsell, definitely with Federal Donuts or the barbecue place, Percy Street, we don't want to disappoint. So I think that for us, and I don't know if this is like just a Philly thing, but like the service has to be great, whether it's you're spending $5 on like donuts and coffee or chicken, or you're having a meal at Zahav, or you're having barbecue at Percy Street. We have to kill it, and I think that without that attitude, I don't think we would do that well.
How many employees do you have in your restaurant group now?
We just had in February, we had like a holiday party. I don't know, maybe 200, something like that, maybe a little bit less.
Like a very, very small town.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a village. Yeah. We have a great restaurant culture, I think.
So you have always been a cook, right?
Yeah.
And sort of moving over to being a restaurateur on top of being a cook is relatively new in your career.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had the privilege of working for, when I was just cooking, I worked for some like incredibly talented people. So Terrence Fury, who was a sous chef and associé at Le Bernardin, didn't open. He was employed as the chef of Striped Bass when I had just moved to Philly. And his brother Patrick Fury worked at Le Cirque and then was the chef of Avenue B. And I worked for both of those guys for a bit. And then I worked for Mark Vetri at Vetri when there was only three kitchen employees, Mark being one of them. Mark was just super entrepreneurial and Terrence was like super French, and I just got a very sort of experience. And then the first job I had as a chef was with my current business partner, Steve Cook, who was a finance guy in the late 90s in New York, hated it, went to like French Culinary Institute at night, and then, moved back to Philly. He was a Wharton graduate, so he moved back to Philly and started cooking there, and then opened his own restaurant after just a few years of cooking. And I got to, he and I became very good friends, and also I got to not only be a chef, but like really work with a small business owner. And we've obviously partnered since then. So I feel like, making the transition from cook to chef to owner is really tricky, and I don't even know, I don't know exactly what I do anymore. I run around on trains with donuts, or I don't know. I mean, I like to cook at Zahav. I don't like to wear like a clean chef coat and go into all the restaurants and pretend to be the chef. Like that doesn't work. All the chefs that we have are like Erin O'Shea is the partner at Percy Street. She's also a chef. I can't do a better job than she can there, and Abe Fisher has got Yehuda Seychel, who is an old sous chef of ours at Zahav, who worked his ass off, and Abe Fisher is part of his identity. I mean, the cuisine is part of his identity. Steve arguably more than I did had to do with the menu. He and Yehuda worked mostly on the menu of Abe Fisher. I mean, I'm like the full-time chef of Zahav. It's difficult to focus, more than I actually can, if that makes sense. And Emily, who's the chef of Dizengoff, I can't do what she does. So I don't know. A lot of this is learning how to sort of back off and not stick my face in everything that isn't really my business. I mean, it is at the end of the day, right? But I think that kind of getting out of the way and letting people do their job and kind of what they're here to do has been a big part of it.
I mean, I feel like that's the hard lesson that anyone who makes it into senior management has to learn. Mm-hmm. It's you can't micromanage. You've got to let talented people be talented.
Well, it's weird. On one hand, you can't micromanage. On the other hand, if I walk into Zahav it's like immediate. I'm like, this needs salt. The bathroom's dirty. This, make sure to smile and make eye contact. So there is micromanagement, but like with the managers, like they have to learn how to make mistakes, and they have to learn how to be owners, actually. I mean, that's kind of what we try to do. We hire cooks to be sous chefs, to be chefs, to be,
It's a path.
It's a path.
If I can just rewind a little bit, how did you get into food? Were you a kid that grew up loving food? Did you like cook with your family?
Not at all. I was I was into a couple things, but I was a really picky eater. And I was like really not into food. And I like didn't eat like tomatoes till I was 18 or whatever. And I dropped out of college. I was like a photo major guy or like a studio arts guy. And I dropped out of school and moved back to Israel where my family was living. And I got a job cooking there just because I couldn't, my Hebrew wasn't good enough to serve. So I like needed a job. And I,
what was the restaurant? Was it?
Well, actually I started a bakery. Which was cool. And then I worked at a restaurant called the Coffee Tree, which is like a cafe in the center of this little town called Kfar Saba, which is like north of Tel Aviv. And it was great. I loved it. And I got into food. I actually got into eating as I got into cooking. It was sort of like a parallel, and it was awesome. I really loved it. I really do like it. I really miss, cooking as much as I used to do. Like I miss that aspect of it, but cooking is great.
So like the hands-on kind of thing about it?
Yeah, what's interesting, that we have a station at Zahav that is like the taboon. It's like the bread station. So you're standing in front of a wood-burning oven and you make laffa, which is like a big puffy Iraqi-style pita that we make for everybody, and we serve hummus with it, right? So everybody basically gets hummus and laffa at the restaurant. And generally, that's the station that I work now. So I physically get to make food for just about every single person that comes in the restaurant, which is like great, because as a chef of a large restaurant or like busy restaurant, it's usually you're not doing that sort of thing. Usually you're like, tasting food and making sure it looks right or whatever, but you don't get to like physically make food for everybody.
So what's involved in working that station?
Well, it's interesting. It's sort of the inside expediting station. So just about all the food minus the desserts and the salad team come,
which are like the
station.
Little salads.
Exactly. They're like we have like 6 salads that go out with the hummus, and just about everything comes through that station, and all the tickets are expedited through that station, and you get to see the front door, and it's kind of on the way to the bathroom. So like
it's the Godfather station.
Exactly. It's right. Speaking of micromanagement, right? I'm like, why are there 10 people waiting without their, So, but for me, it's awesome because I get to, I don't know, the customer experience, the guest experience is like the most important thing in any restaurant, right? It's the whatever it is that they walk away with, whatever memory you give them that they walk away with is the most important thing. And you get to physically be part of that, and not just making the food and not just making sure the food is going out okay, but literally like, telling people the bathroom is on the left. Like that's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal for our customers, I think, to know that, and for the employees to know that like an owner is there, going down like a ton of bricks on the bread station. Like that's the thing too. You get fucking buried.
You still get in the weeds, even.
Oh my God, yeah, every day. Not every day, but a lot.
How many nights a week, like on average, are you working at Zahav?
Well, usually it's 5 nights a week. That because we've got like a cookbook going out, and because there's a lot of like events that seem to be happening all the time. Like today, for example, like I should be at Zahav doing the chef's counter or the tasting menu. Tonight, I've got my sous chef Bo doing it, and so I would say 5 nights a week mostly, but. If there's like weird stuff happening elsewhere, then I'll.
But that's no bullshit. I mean, that's not just sort of like paying lip service to being like, I'm the chef at Zahav. Like you are actually
right
full-time chef.
Well, that's it, and like any sort of menu changes and all that stuff. I mean, it's a huge restaurant, so it are huge for like Philly standards. Big enough, too big for me, right? So my business partner Steve, who is everybody sort of thinks is just like the money guy or whatever. I mean, he and I come up with menu ideas all the time. I mean, my sous chefs, I try to empower them as much as humanly possible. So the menu's always sort of changing. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
So Zahav is an Israeli restaurant.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting type of food.
Yes.
Because Israel is a relatively young entity, like from a conceptual perspective, and also that Israel, much like the United States, is a nation largely comprised of immigrants.
Yes.
So what does Israeli food mean in the context of a restaurant in Philadelphia?
Well, so Israeli food, and this is a great question, and every day we sort of ask ourselves what it is that we're doing. But so the easiest thing to say is the Israeli food is food that's being cooked in Israel right now, which is, kind of a paradox when you're like in Eastern Pennsylvania or in Philly cooking food, right? That should be in Israel. But really, Israel is made up of, I don't know how many different cultures. You have like the Jewish community that has all moved back to Israel basically after being like in the diaspora post Babylon.
Right. So like the last 4,000 or 5,000 years of spread.
A little bit less than that, but still thousands of years. You've got Palestinians. You've got the Ottoman influence, which is huge in that area, right? And then you've got the surrounding countries. You've got Jews that have moved from Syria. You've got Druze from Lebanon, Syria. You've got Greeks and Turks, Yemeni, North African, like Libyan, Algerian, Moroccan, people from Cyprus. My grandmother was from Bulgaria, but from Spain before that, like from like the Inquisition, Mm-hmm. So you have so much, and then you also have it all in one place being incubated in like this part of the world where like modern agriculture began, right? So there's a lot. I mean, it's super stimulating as far as cooking goes. What we try to do at Zahav, though, is look at Israel as a whole and say, like, well, we're going to do this, with that. So, like, if you're in Israel and you want Yemenite food, you go to a Yemeni restaurant, right? Or if you want Moroccan, you go to, like, a Moroccan person's house or a Moroccan restaurant or whatever. And we have this sort of third-person perspective where we can bring it all kind of together.
And, like, synthesize it and do the entire country. And
we can do it. We can take all the different cultures and we can bring it together. We can use different cooking techniques, like cooking royal trumpet mushrooms, which you don't really find in the Middle East, right? You can cook those over the charcoal and marinate them like you would lamb shishlik, right? So it tastes super meaty, and then just...
I made that recipe the other day.
That's
from
what I heard. How was it?
It was amazing. It was so terrific. So this cookbook is coming out in October, right?
October 6th. Yep.
And I... basically my most prized possession right now is my galley of this
book.
Thank
you so much.
It's true. She let me look at it for like 10 minutes.
And then I
was
demanded
like,
took it back?
Yeah.
Where is it right now, Greg?
It's in my backpack.
Okay, cool.
Right next to the stolen donuts.
But no, it was an amazing recipe. And it did feel like it had that fusion. I mean, there's like king trumpet mushrooms, who that's not a traditional Middle Eastern ingredient.
Not at all.
But then you have this marinade of pureed raw onions and allspice, which is this genius crazy addition.
Right,
and
that's sort of like the meat, it makes it taste like steak or like lamb or something, yeah.
So what's the thought process behind coming up with a recipe like that?
Well, so a couple things. One, marinating, using things like onion juice and garlic juice help break down meat, and when you cook them over charcoal, or not, but when you caramelize them and the sugars cook in the onion and the acid in the onion is broken down the meat, it tenderizes it, right? But it gives everything this robust sort of Israeli barbecue kind of thing. The mushrooms, but the idea of cooking vegetables as a meat is also a big thing in Israel. I mean, for many, many years, it was super poor. So the diet is very vegetable heavy. Even now, it's when you go there, it's cucumber tomato salad 3 times a day for a meal, right? So the idea of using vegetables as the entree is actually a very much Israeli thing. The mushrooms, when you marinate them with the onion juice and especially the allspice, which is kind of particular to that dish, and you roast them, to me, it really does taste like roasted meat. So why not showcase it? Serve it with a little tahina, bring it over to the plate on the skewer, and you've got something that is vegan or vegetarian, but not because you're only serving a vegan customer, because it tastes really freaking good, And trumpet mushrooms and head of the woods are things that we get in Philly all the time.
And Philly has, talk about the amazing agriculture that you'd have in the Middle East. Philly has incredible seafood coming from the east and incredible dairy coming from the west.
Yep.
And I feel like the farmers markets in Philly are unlike any that I've seen on the East Coast.
They're really good, except for that we don't have cucumbers and tomatoes like, every single month, right? We only have them for like 2 or 3 months. So what we have to do is take like butternut squash or take cabbage and say, well, how is this gonna, what spices, what technique, what little like nuance of cooking is gonna make this taste appropriate for what we're doing? Because I'm not gonna order tomatoes in February when it's like 7 fucking degrees outside. I'm not going to do it, And, and that to us has been what has been so liberating. That's what makes our restaurant relevant. It's not just like, I'm not an Israeli grandmother. It wouldn't taste right.
Wait, hold up.
Yeah. I know. I feel like a freaking Israeli grandmother. Like I'm like tired. I want to just play like backgammon and like not talk to people. But I'm unfortunately I'm not. So what we have to do is figure out what makes it relevant, and like I said, that's what sort of given Zahav identity. When we first opened, we had this like little private room that I would do like chef's tasting menu, like, sort of ego. I'm a molecular chef and I want to like, show off or whatever. And then we would do the classic stuff that was like not really creative. It was just kind of like, this is what they do in Israel. Let's do it here. And it like sucked. Like the whole experience sucked because we weren't paying enough attention to the regular menu. And because we were cooking like modern Israeli modernist food for like 10 people in like 2008. And nobody liked it, and it was stupid. Right. To me, like after that period, after I was like, it just wasn't working. Like we almost closed actually. I mean, we almost went under in 2008. My business partner and I.
Well, it was a rough year.
It was not a great year to open an Israeli restaurant in Philadelphia, especially in Philly, because the Phillies were in the playoffs. We were like, it was like new election, the stock market, everything sucked. And I was like, personally, there was a lot of like horrible shit happening in my life, and my business partner and I were like in the weeds. And at one point, it was like we weren't listening to our customers. We weren't focusing the attention on what we wanted to express with Israeli food. And at one point, my business partner was like, dude, you got to just cook. I'm a chef. Like, I need to be creative. I need to interpret. I need to have outlets for whatever ideas I have. And he was like, you're not doing it with what we're doing right now. This isn't connecting with people. It worked after a while. We stopped with, like, the fancy food. I threw out the circulator. I mean, we cook meat over charcoal.
Yeah.
We cook laffa to order in a wood-burning oven. I mean, like, that's the exciting stuff, not the... I don't need to copy what everybody else is doing just so we can have, like, a cool plating technique.
So when did people kind of take notice of, like, these changes and that you guys pivoted?
Pivoting. It's like a startup.
We did a pivot. We actually, we got a lot of really good press out of the gates. I just think it was sort of peppered. Like, it was very hype-based. I mean, nobody was really doing, like, Israeli food. And I think that generated a lot of buzz. We started to like take paychecks or not be concerned that we were going to fail probably in April of 2009. So it took about almost a year to like make it. And I remember we had this like, our first anniversary party, and it was like, thank God we we were so elated. We were so ecstatic because it was like, we could pay people and, eventually started taking paychecks and all that stuff. It was cool.
And now it's like 6 or 7 years later, and
May 5th will be 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's forever.
Congratulations.
In restaurant time.
Yeah, it's like dog years, I know.
Yeah.
Speaking of Israeli grandmother.
But I feel like now, in the last year in particular, the palate of the Middle East has become a trendy palate.
Yes.
In the United States.
Yes.
Like it was Chinese, and then it was Korean, and then it was like California. And right now, everyone is like losing their minds with excitement over like sumac.
Yes, sumac, za'atar, all those things. What's ironic is that the Pennsylvania Dutch, like the guys that we buy our produce from, they've been using sumac to make pink lemonade for like hundreds of years.
That's really cool.
Yeah, totally. It's good.
Well, sumac is lemony.
Sumac is what the lemon flavor was in the Middle East before the Moors brought lemons, actually. So yeah, sumac's been used forever. It's awesome. You can cure things with it, and it doesn't ceviche. Like there's no real acid or no substantial amount of acid. So you can like rub something like a piece of fish with tons of it to make it lemony without cooking it.
That is a good food hack.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a Palestinian dish called sumakaya, I think, and it's like
which just means like the sumac dish.
Basically,
right?
Well, it's braised lamb that's finished with a shitload of sumac, and it's like super sour and pomegranate, so it's got that like red fruit and lemony, and you finish the stew with trina. It's awesome. So yeah, sumac is great. People are using it. You know, I think that people are calling food Israeli now. They're not like Israelis in Israel are opening restaurants that are about Israeli food. They're not going to like Michelin restaurants in Spain or in France and coming back and trying to reproduce that, you know? And I think that, I mean, for me, like that's what everybody was doing in my generation. Like everyone was going to like Spain. Right. I almost actually, before I met Steve, I almost went to Arzak. I almost like, you know, they have like a 2-year unpaid stage in San Sebastian that I was like gonna do. And I'm glad I didn't, you know.
Understanding that, you know, Middle Eastern food, Israeli cuisine, there's bigger awareness about it and people are getting really interested in it. Did that influence at all the way that you put the cookbook together? Is it going to break down the ingredients for people? Or?
It is. I mean, I think that Zahav, the cookbook, is definitive. It's definitive Israeli cooking for like Westerners, basically. I think. I mean, not for just Westerners, but I think that like the thing about the Middle East and what I think a lot of people are experiencing, it's so like mysterious, right? Like everything is sort of ancient and it's huge. Like it's ambiguous. Like North African cooking is totally different than like food of the Levant, and Israeli food for the long time people thought was just like falafel and shawarma, which is not native to Israel either. So I think that we just wanted to break it down and make it approachable and try to not make it like Asterix, go to your local Middle Eastern supermarket and be terrified,
right?
You know, of like not being able to find the right ingredient or whatever. So we really wanted to make it approachable and definitive and sort of give logical steps while encompassing what we felt like was representative of Israeli cuisine.
Did you have fun writing the cookbook or was it like a nightmare? I've heard both. It could be either.
Honestly, it was one of the best experiences I've had involving food.
Whoa.
My business partner, Steve, wrote the book. Dorothy Kalins, who's just a freaking genius and
She's
a pioneer,
amazing. Produced
the book. Don Morris did page layout, and my good friend Mike Persico shot the book. And Mike and I have been friends forever, and this is his first cookbook. So it was just... You know, and it was about Israeli food in the States, and it was about our restaurant. It was about my family. And honestly, at the end of the day, like when we finished, I was like, I have a greater understanding of what it was that we were trying to do for so many years. It gave me perspective on what we were doing. And I feel like that's some magical shit right there.
So there's a touch of personal narrative and mixed in with
most
all
of
this?
it. Most of it is personal. And the fact that it wasn't written by a ghostwriter or somebody that was like a professional cookbook author, which would have made it a lot easier.
I wish they like categorized cookbooks that way in the bookstore.
Like
with a ghost writer.
I know.
Without.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there are plenty of people that do a really good job at that. It would have been great. The fact of the matter is Dorothy saw my business partner Steve wrote a chapter or a head note, and she was like, okay, you can do this. You know, and she just sort of nudged when she did. I mean, I wrote the intro, which was like 20 pages fucking long, and she was like, no, dude, you got to redo that. So she directed everything, and Steve, he and I share a large part of this book. So, I mean, even the restaurant was sort of built by us, right? And Steve and I have known each other for years and years, and we've been through good times and really awful times together. So it just seemed the right thing to do. So it is my narrative, I guess, and it's like Steve's narrative as well. And I don't feel terribly comfortable writing or talking about myself. So and also I'm a chef. Like, I don't know how people write this shit on their own. I mean, I would need like 6 months of like not doing anything else. You know, we're running restaurants, opening restaurants, all that stuff. I mean, it would be incredibly difficult to write a book, I think.
Well, we're writers and we don't run restaurants on the side. I mean, yeah, no.
Well,
it's
you don't, Helen.
Greg
it's
has
also
a secret restaurant.
I mean, it's really difficult. I don't know how you guys do it, but writer's block is a thing.
It's
and
the worst.
It is the worst, and it's for me. I experience it with writing like menu ideas or whatever, and I can't be in the restaurant. Like I can't come up with great ideas when I'm in the restaurant cooking. I have to be on a train, or I have to be somewhere else, and it's difficult. I mean, it just takes so much discipline. So for Steve to write the book and for us to continue doing our jobs, it was really a lot of work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your personal life, though, even though you just said you don't like to. The book is dedicated to your brother, David, who was killed while serving in the Israeli army.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2003.
So before Zahav came into existence, but after you were a chef.
Yeah, so I'd started cooking, and I was working at Vetri restaurant, and I had just like accepted the sous chef position, which is funny because it's like 3 employees. Like I was the guy that did the ordering. I wasn't, And I went, and so what he used to do at Vetri, which is like super Italian, is close in the summer for 3 weeks, which unfortunately he doesn't do anymore, right? And
he's a big deal now.
Well,
people want to come to the restaurant.
Also, I'm like, who closes a restaurant for 3 weeks? I wish we could do that, but we. So I went to Israel, and I hadn't been there in almost 4 years, like since I'd sort of started cooking. And my brother David, unlike me, had sort of assimilated and gone to high school in Israel. And when we moved back, I stayed American, and he became, I guess, Israeli. And so everyone goes to the military, right? Everyone does army service, and he was in an infantry unit and was right before his. So I went back from Vetri to visit, and he was like on his last month of service, and we got to hang out, and we hadn't really spent a lot of time together in almost 4 years. So we got to hang out for like weeks, and just do like brother stuff. Like we hadn't, those were pretty formative years that we had missed. So it was awesome, And then I came back to the States. He was supposed to finish. And then a few days before his release, which happened to coincide with Yom Kippur, he was killed. Patrolling like the Lebanese border, basically.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, after that, I mean, this is all sort of hindsight. I didn't realize this, but I needed a way to get close to him because I had missed so many years, and because he was 21, and I felt, like shit was just falling apart. And it took a while to sort of ring it in and understand what it was that was happening. But even through, after that, I didn't want to really cook Italian food. Like it didn't make sense for me to do. And the idea of like the cliched idea of like cooking Israeli food to get close to my brother, it wasn't something that we could like formulate. It just it kind of happened. It made sense. And people liked it, So Steve hired me at Marigold. And I started cooking. It was like New American or whatever, but we started using Israeli ingredients like hawaj, which is like a Yemenite spice blend, or za'atar, and sumac and all these sort of things. And people took notice, and it was a way to sort of identify with Israel, to be perfectly honest with you. And it was... it's a way to advocate for Israel without having to get like political, and I guess in a way, it brings me closer to Dave.
I gotta say that's really touching, and thank you for sharing that. I could never, because as someone who doesn't really cook very much, it's very hard for me to understand the idea of like cooking, in somebody's honor or to get closer, like you were saying,
right.
Is that just something, is that like kind of just, it's the process of doing it?
I think it is. I don't think it's like terribly cognitive. Like it's not happening in real time. You sort of look back and you're like, okay, this is why all this has happened. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it definitely wasn't easy too. I mean, speaking of personal stuff, like I'd gone through a lot of like substance abuse issues after my brother was killed. And it took a long time to like focus on just the good or the bittersweet. I don't like when I'm like rolling bread out, I'm like I'm doing this for like Dave, or it's like lafas for David or anything. But I don't know. His story is unique, right? And I think that Israel can tend to get a bad rap sometimes. And he was just doing his job. He was patrolling a border, and he was, killed. He was shot by Hezbollah snipers that were in Lebanon, firing into Israel, and it was just like totally unfortunate and fucked up. And and he was a peaceful kid that wasn't, didn't hate Arabs or anything like that. And it was just, it's important for me. I don't want to move back to Israel. Actually, after he was killed, I was like considering moving back to Israel to join the military, which would have, I would have like shot my eye out or something. I would have sucked at that. And I don't think that that's the best way that for me to represent Israel and for me to pay, homage to my brother. I don't think that would have been the right thing to do. So this seems more appropriate.
Cooking in general, but a restaurant in particular is a really subtle and powerful avenue to express like your allegiance and appreciation to a place without having to be there.
Yes.
To sort of serve as an ambassador.
Totally. And I think that, we're celebrating like food, which is celebrating people and culture. And I just think that, this cliched shit comes all the time. I'm not like going to create peace in the Middle East through food, but honestly, like it would be a much easier, more diplomatic way than what's actually happening now. So maybe at some point, I want to be able to celebrate these cultures, that David died defending.
Yeah.
And I think and plus we have a lot of fun. Like that's the thing too. I don't want to say it's all for my, my brother or whatever, because like the truth is we have like 60 employees that work their ass off every day at Zahav to have a great restaurant, to provide great hospitality.
And the diners who come in and have amazing, delicious meals that have huge amounts of like happiness and celebration attached to them, as opposed to,
of course,
sort of a somber memorial.
Right, exactly. So I don't want to. So all this, like what I've just said about my brother, I don't want to. That shouldn't minimize the work that everybody does every single day to like get through service, or
So around this time last year, there was a story in the Times by Frank Bruni, and, that was about your personal history with substance abuse and some of these things we just talked about. And I just remember reading that and like applauding, the fact that you were so candid about this stuff and that you were sharing. Because I've always kind of understood that there's been a lot of substance abuse in just restaurant life in general.
Yes.
And that people don't really talk about it.
Or when they do, they talk about it in such a glorifying way. Like, yeah, you can totally just shoot up heroin and go work the line.
Right.
It's like the Kitchen Confidential, like...
I know. Well, I just felt like I had been clean and sober for a while, and I was fine talking about that, and I wasn't that particular or that specific, but the more positive accolade we got, I thought it was... I don't know. It just seemed like the right time to be like brutally honest, and I don't know. It sort of scared the shit out of my parents. They knew that I was clean. They knew I went to rehab. They knew I was in recovery and I was in a program and all that stuff. But, the details I think probably shocked a lot of people. If you have any experience at all with substance abuse, you realize that like any substance can be super dangerous. Like everyone's like, whoa, you smoke crack, isn't that crazy? And I'm like, I guess so. If I got drunk and drove into somebody and killed them, it would be just as upsetting. Or so I think that I wasn't trying to glorify, and I think that it was like a little bit shocking and a good read. But I mean, I think that for everything that for every good piece of literature that was written about us or about me or whatever, I don't know, it's like very useful to other people that are either struggling in the industry or not in the industry to know that this is like something that is happening and that we're all sort of vulnerable and susceptible to this kind of stuff.
Is there anything you do as a restaurateur, with a big staff, presumably a lot of younger chefs? I mean, do you ever talk about this stuff with them?
I do. I'm pretty open about it. I don't like preach or whatever. When I got back from rehab, I was like, oh shit, everybody here has like got a problem or whatever. And the reality was that I was the worst drug addict of anybody. If you had to like rate, it was like, my behavior was like the worst. So it took a little bit of time, but I would like to think that the culture in our restaurant or maybe our organization is a little bit more tame. And it's not because we like it just, there's no like, nobody gets fucked up during service. It's not part of the culture, and it's a really demanding restaurant, right? So if people get wasted, are up all night partying and come into the restaurant and don't perform well, it's like a problem. And I don't, people can do whatever they want. That's fine. If it starts affecting work, then it's a huge problem. And if I see people that are struggling personally, I'm going to try to help them. And if I can't help them, then they're going to leave.
Has it changed the way you think about kitchen culture in general?
I think in general, yeah. I mean, I think it's a really, people talk about like working in restaurants because they can party and get banged up. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. My friends that work in like banks or whatever, they don't get wasted at work like when they're like counting money, or maybe they do, not that I know of. I think that we work more effectively as a team when everybody's like there to do the job. And I also think that if you have an issue with substances, eventually it's going to catch up. People use the word functioning drug addict or alcoholic. I mean, you're only functioning until you're not, and I hid an addiction while I met my business partner, while we got all these awards, while we opened restaurants, while I got married. I mean, I hid an addiction for my wife. I mean, she didn't find out till 2 years after that she was like married to like a crackhead, basically. And it was like, yeah, if I functioned, fine. But I mean, I was always a step away from like dying, or a step away from like getting caught, or, so many close calls. And I think that eventually things just go really bad, and you can't really, you have to deal with those things. Whether they're people that I know that work for me or with me, I mean, it's sort of my responsibility as an employer, but also as a friend, or as a recovering addict to try to help.
Sounds like you've had a very busy, very intense last decade or so of your life.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I'm like an Israeli grandparent, dude. It's time to just play checkers and shit on like park benches. I wish I could do that.
You've earned that.
Right.
So what's next for Federal Doughnuts? Things are humming along. You got
it. So we got some really cool stuff happening with Federal Doughnuts.
To totally change the subject.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Phew. Oh God, I just pissed my pants. Right. All of us at Federal Doughnuts, but sort of spearheaded by Steve Cook. He sits on the hospitality board of Broad Street Ministries, which is a community church that also provides social services and food, like they do meals at a church on Broad Street in Philadelphia for people that are in need. And we started volunteering there. Our company goes in quarterly and like will serve lunch or serve a meal to a few hundred people that need it. But Broad Street Ministries does counseling for people. It is it's a mailbox for people. Like you can't get benefits or whatever without an address. So it's an address to maybe 1,000 people or something like that, or even more in Philly. So Steve sits on the hospitality board, and we decided that what we were going to do at Federal Doughnuts was get whole chickens, and the pieces of chicken that we couldn't like fry and serve, because we serve donuts and fried chicken, we were going to make soup out of. I was like, we'll make soup and we'll give soup out to people. And like, that's not what Broad Street does. They don't want to just serve chicken soup to people standing in line on the street, So
it's
their
so
mission,
Dickensian.
Right, exactly. Their mission is to be an actual service to people. So what we canned my stupid ass idea, and what we're gonna do is take all the chicken backs and everything that we can't serve at Federal Doughnuts and make a soup restaurant out of it, basically, and 100% of the profit goes to Broad Street Ministry.
Cool. When's it opening?
It's called Rooster Soup. Well, I don't know. We're getting very, very close on a location. So that's going to be happening really soon, within the year. And then separately, there's a school in Philly called the Workshop School, which is all project-based learning. And they're going to take all of our chicken fat and fryer oil and convert it into fuel, biofuel, basically. And
the fried chicken powered car.
Oh my God, it smells so good. No, I want to wear a chicken suit and drive around a scooter in Philly with fueled by chicken fat or whatever. That's my dream. But these guys are amazing. They won, what was it, the X Prize? It was the West Philadelphia High School had Simon Hauger, basically was the physics teacher, I believe, and also had this after school program that took kids and taught them basically how to like build cars, right? And then I can't remember the name of this, and I'm really shitty at this sort of thing, but there was this contest that was to build I think the fastest, maybe it was an electric car, And basically, the West Philly high school kids got second place.
That's awesome.
Like in the country, right? So the school, he got his own school, and they're doing all this amazing stuff. They're going to work on powering a car with our fryer fuel, and they're also going to take the byproduct, which is glycerin, and make Federal Donuts soap. And we're going to market it and sell it.
That's amazing. So you could like call up Federal Donuts, order some fried chicken and donuts, have it delivered to you. Not that you do delivery, but like in theory, literally by you, Mike Solomonov, in a chicken suit,
and I'll sell you
on a
soap.
Biofuel powered scooter with the chicken fat, and then you can wash your hands afterwards.
Wash your hands, and the workshop school kids will
with their soap.
Exactly, we'll sell you soap.
Then you take your Federal Donuts towel and wipe your hands off.
Exactly.
And you go to sleep in your Federal Donuts bed in your Federal Donuts house.
I know. It's like you're
circular. Taking over the world.
I know.
So are you going to come to New York? I bet everyone. You don't have to answer that.
It's a big question, right? I don't know. We're looking to expand. We have 4, and then we've got one at the ballpark, and then we've got another sort of top secret project that we're working on in Philly as well. That isn't like, that's not like bricks. It's something else. And we're looking to expand. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go. We were looking in New York.
We have space in the Eater office.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I think New York would be awesome. I just think it's a lot. I mean, we sell donuts for like $1.50 and chicken for like, under 10. And we need to figure out how to organize so we can keep it the same. I don't want to just come to New York and make it expensive because we can. It's not what our mission is.
Do people ask you if you're going to expand to New York all the time?
All the time.
I'm sorry.
All the time. No, don't worry about it. For Zahav, I thought that's like what we were going to do. I mean, I thought that would be the ultimate goal. And being a chef in New York is kind of like the thing, right? And we were talking about it, but there's something really cool about having an Israeli restaurant in Philly that people go to from New York and from DC. So I don't know. New York is awesome, man. I love it. But it's nice being in Philly. Are you guys going to like beat me up?
No. We kind of, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to speak for Greg, but like I get kind of sick in New York sometimes. I like having a reason to leave.
It's always good to have a reason to leave. And
we've got like 10 reasons for you to leave.
Yeah.
Just 10.
Boom.
More.
And there's that Bolt bus.
Yeah.
Bolt
$17. So listen, before we say goodbye, we have a lightning round.
Oh God. Okay.
What is your airport vice?
People Magazine and Sour Patch Kids.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good combo. That's
totally.
like very well paired.
Then you're all set up. You got like your first 30 minutes of the flight.
Ready to go.
Who's your favorite like people storyline? Like, are you a Kim Kardashian guy or like the Princess Di reissues or like what's your jam?
Usually it's like the people that make fun of people for what they wear. It's hilarious. The commentary is great. It's fucking witty, But I like the human interest story. I like have a hard time reading there in that particular magazine. But I don't know. It's like it's easy reading.
Yeah. When you're on a road trip, what's the album that you blast?
That's a great question. I have like mostly Beck CDs in my car. I like sort of old and new Beck a lot. I'm like really into hip hop, and I feel like that does well with cars, like car trips. And I'm also, because I was born in Israel, I'm really like secretly I like trance and like shitty like house music. So I like electronic music. Okay, fuck it, I said it.
This is a safe space.
It is a safe space. Nobody's here. Nobody can hear us. But I feel like that works really well in cars.
If you were not a chef, what would you be doing?
That's a great question. I would probably be like a drug counselor, and then. But really, I would just I want to surf or snowboard all day. You know what I want to do? I want to make dinner for my family every night. That's what I want to do. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get there.
How often do you cook for your family?
Not like maybe twice and like ever.
Well, our next question actually is what is your go-to meal for cooking for your family off the cuff?
Oh, so here's what we do. We actually we'll have like leftovers from our barbecue restaurant, Percy Street. So that was a gratuitous plug, right? We get brisket from Percy Street Barbecue on, in between 9th and 10th on South Street in Philadelphia. And we, it's so, seriously, the brisket is like out of this world. Aaron's brisket is better than.
Is it like Southern style brisket or
Texas
Jewish
style?
Okay, so it's Texas style.
It's Texas, right? So it's like the best kind of Jewish deli meats, right? Texas. So I would battle any brisket with that brisket. We'll have leftovers, and there's also on 9th Street, which is very close in the Italian market, is a tortilleria, and they make fresh tortillas, right? And you can get a kilo of it for like $3. So we take leftover beans and we take leftover burnt ends, and we make like a bean burnt end situation, and we put it on fresh tortillas with cheese. It is so freaking good. Best.
That sounds like a whole new restaurant there or something. It's
so good, man. Fresh tortillas are like, there's nothing better with like barbecued brisket. It's crazy good.
Well, we wanted to thank you so much for coming into
thank you guys so much
studio.
for having me. It's like such a pleasure.
When does the book come out?
October 6th. Yeah. October 6th.
But I bet you could like pre-order it 20 years
in
advance.
Go right now and pre-order it. You can go to our website, or you can go to the place where you pre-order everything.
That one website?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it. Yeah, but in any case, pre-order it right now. I think it's like inexpensive. All right, so do it. And come to Philly and check us out, yeah?
Wait, if I want to get into like EDM, what should I listen to?
Israeli EDM specifically.
I don't, if you want like, I like the progressive house from like the late 90s. But if you want like good electronic music, listen to like Diesel Boy. He's like the best.
Okay.
On the ones and twos.
He's a foodie, by the way.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I don't even know what ones and twos means.
Like DJ, like turntables, 1 and 2. Like Polly D on the 1s and 2s.
I'm like the uncool kind of nerd.
Yeah, but Diesel Boy's sick, so check him out. All right,
cool. Awesome. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
On the next episode of the Eater Upsell, Helen and I will talk with Anita Lowe of Anissa in New York City. There's a new episode every other Monday morning. If you're not already a subscriber, search your podcast app for the Eater Upsell or go to itunes.com/Eater Upsell.
And as always, you can visit eater.com, where you can find more episodes, read transcripts, and all sorts of other cool stuff.
The Eater Upsell is recorded in the Vox Media Studios in beautiful Midtown Manhattan. Our producer is Maureen Giannone. Our editor is Dion Lee.
Our studio team is Will Bukema, Alex Ulrich, Mark Paradise. Our editor-in-chief is Amanda Clute. I'm Helen Rosner, and that guy is Greg Morabito. Thanks for listening.